Chapter 10 The Queen of the East One day, some 7 years later, a man came into the city of Tarsus with a look of inquiry in his eyes as he searched the faces of those who met him in the streets. He was a traveller, a stranger to Tarsus, but that would not seem unusual to the people in that great city, where men from all parts of the world were going to and fro every day. He made inquiries among the Jews, and, at last, he was directed to the house where Saul was living. Saul, as his eyes turned to this strange visitor, would scan his face curiously for a moment, then, "Barnabas!" Saul would cry, as he leapt to his feet to welcome his old comrade. It was, indeed, that splendid Cypriote Jew, who, you remember, had years before sold his land for the great cause, and had been the first to grasp Saul's hand as he came a refugee from Damascus to cold Jerusalem. When Barnabas had rested a little and washed after travel, the two comrades sat down to talk. Saul listened with growing eagerness as Barnabas told him why he had come to find him in Tarsus. "I have come from Antioch in Syria," Barnabas would say. "Wonderful things are happening there. When I was at Jerusalem men came to us from Antioch with a strange story. They said that the brethren from Cyprus and North Africa had been preaching in Antioch, not to the Jews only, but even to the Greeks. And the Greeks, many of them, have actually given up their gods of marble and ivory and silver, and have turned and become disciples. So I went up through the country all the way to Antioch, and told them to grip hold of the faith with all their power. But there are so many of them in Antioch that I am not able to give them all the teaching in the way that they need. And there are many, many more to be shown the way and the truth. So I have come for you to join me and help me. Will you come?" Saul's heart, hand and voice must all have leapt in response. Would he go? Why, this was the great call he had been listening for throughout all the 7 years of waiting, the years of quiet work in and round Tarsus. Rolling up his mat and cloak, and getting his wallet and bottle and staff, he would swiftly get ready to start with Barnabas back to Antioch. We cannot tell by which route they went, for they could go by sea or by land. If they took ship in the harbour, they would be rowed down on the stream. Bearing southeast, when they reached the open sea, the coasting vessel would scud across the gulf, heading for the Syrian coast. All day she would sail, and by the time the purple sunset was lighting the tapering cone of Mount Cassius till it glowed like a torch, they would run in between the towers of the Seleucia breakwaters into the outer port, and thence to the inner basin of the calabash-shaped harbour. In the morning the two comrades would be out by dawn from the harbour city of Seleucia to start their tramp of 16 miles up the road that led from the port to the metropolis, Antioch. On the right of this road was the river Orontes curving like a serpent along the plain. If they went from Tarsus by land, they would trudge by the great road round the head of the gulf, the road by which Alexander the Great and Xenophon had both passed with their armies. The muleteers and camel drivers would find themselves outstripped by these two travelling Jews, who strode along with cloaks over shoulders and robes girt under their leather belts, in order to give their legs freedom for walking. Saul's face would glow and his eyes gleam with sheer happiness. He was on his way to one of the 3 greatest cities of the world, tramping by the side of his friend Barnabas, on the service of him for whom he was quite ready to die and in whom he gloried to live. And this was only to be a beginning of adventures. No wonder Saul rejoiced. As they walked on, Barnabas would tell Saul that it was not to be all plain sailing for them in their work at Antioch. "These Greeks," he would say, "have the Spirit in them. They walk in the way. But the strict Jews among the brethren, especially down at Jerusalem, say that these newcomers must be circumcised, i.e., they must become Jews, before they can really join us. I say no. What do you think?" It does not seem to us at first sight very exciting to know whether Saul said yes or no. Yet, if he had disagreed with Barnabas, the whole history of the world might have been different, and our own land, and therefore we ourselves, might never have heard of Jesus. For the followers of Jesus, if Saul had sided with the stricter Jew Nazarenes, might well have become a narrow little Jewish clique. What was Saul's answer? From the words that he wrote later we know he would say something like this: "The good news about Jesus is the saving power both to the Jew and the Greek. The great thing is, not that men should be circumcised, but that each should dedicate his whole body to God as the temple of His Spirit." In such talk about the great work in front of them, Barnabas and his younger colleague Saul would at last come out in sight of the walls of Antioch. Passing by lovely groves of myrtle and other trees, the road curved southward just where it came out on the bridge, whose 4 round arches spanned the greatest stream in all Syria, the Orontes River. In front of Saul, as he set foot on the bridge, was the frowning wall which the Romans had built all along the river front and round the whole city. To his left, outside the walls, lay the marble, open-air hippodrome. Over the turreted walls and beyond the plain on which the city spread itself, he saw away to the south the high bluffs and crests of mountains, especially the stern Mount Sulpius, where the goats leapt up the ravines. Over the shoulder of this mountain the Roman wall ran, dropping into defiles and leaping again up the hillside to the square, forbidding mass of the citadel, where the soldiers' bugles sounded the change of sentries. The wall ran on, past the citadel, till it dropped into the plain and swept round, completing the circle on the bank of the Orontes at the bridge where Saul stood. Barnabas and Saul walked across the bridge, which was the first of 5 bridges that crossed the river Orontes at Antioch. They joined the city to the royal island suburb, where the palace and buildings of the Roman nobles glittered in the sunshine. Passing through the gateway in the city wall, the travellers came at once on all the hum and bustle of Antioch. In the centre of the city they walked into the most wonderful street in the world of that day. For 4 miles it stretched east and west, one shining colonnade of white marble. It had been built by Herod. Roman ladies in swinging palanquins borne by slaves, shielded by dainty curtains from the sun and from the dust of the streets, and droves of mules bearing figs from Cyprus, splendid carvings from Greece, books from the learned cities of North Africa, or purple cloth from the world-famed dyers of Tyre, met caravans of dromedaries tired from their long march over the sands from beyond the Euphrates and grunting under their loads of Persian silks and of dates. At the very centre of the city, where the great street from the palace crossed Herod's street of marble, Saul came on the city square, where a noble statue of Apollo stood for the worship of the Romans. "Here is Saul the Tarsian," Barnabas would tell the other brothers when at last Saul reached Barnabas's home. The leaders would gather to meet this new young colleague, men like Black Simeon, Lucius from Cyrene in North Africa, and Manaen, who was related to Herod. They all greeted the new comrade, and would soon find that Saul, though he was not a big, tall man nor very striking to look at, was a far abler speaker than their old friend Barnabas. But Saul, with his dashing temper, had not yet grown so steady and wise as his comrade. One wonderful thing they noticed was the strange intense power of his look, when he fixed his eyes on you and spoke. As Saul went along Herod's marble street, he would notice many of the most richly dressed people going through the west gate of the city. "That is the Daphne gate," they told him. As he went through the gate he came out on a broad road lined with splendid Roman villas with mosaic courtyards, in which fountains were throwing water from the heads of carved dolphins into marble basins. Paths led out among shaded woods, which spread over 10 miles of country where running waters tinkled down the glens past a marble temple, whose pillars could be seen through the trees in a green open space. In the temple was a mighty statue of Apollo, the god of light, pouring wine from a golden goblet. The white bodies of bathers were splashing in the water, breaking into shining ripples the dappled surface of sunshine and green shadow. It all looked beautiful, and yet, when Saul saw the worshippers round the marble statue, He could see from their loose lips and the flabby faces of many of them, and from their leering looks and foul actions, that the whole worship was, like the life at Antioch, the glittering surface of a poisonous pool. The languorous coarseness of the East had mixed with the physical beauty of the Greek and the brute strength of the Roman to make the temple festivals scenes of beastliness. As Saul walked back through the groves and into Antioch, he would see that in all this wide-spreading city of the Plain of Sunshine everyone seemed to be set on making all the money that he could and then spending it on pleasures. She was rightly called the heathen queen, Antioch the Beautiful, with her head on the mountain crowned with the citadel and with the river running at her feet. The Antiochenes liked to see sport, but were too slack and flabby to go in for athletic games themselves. They paid gladiators, great prize-fighting giants, to kill each other and to fight with lions for their amusement. Slaves carried the rich citizens down to the hippodrome and fanned them while they watched the shouting charioteers cracking their whips as they urged the straining and steaming horses, white with foam, round the oval track. As Saul passed along the street he saw a boy with a flask of oil and a measure of wheat going toward a little temple, making his offering to the idol Apollo. And he would hardly know how to hold himself. There was the statue of Apollo, whom the Antiochenes specially worshipped, exquisitely graceful, icily faultless, splendidly null, a god whose story was interesting but could help no boy to keep his life clean. Saul wanted to tell that boy of his own living hero, strong and resolute, who alone could lead that boy into the full stature of manhood. Saul looked out over the people there before him, going up and down in the street. He saw some curious, some hard and sneering, some thirsty in spirit, olive-faced, black-haired Jewish lads, straight from the synagogue school, black Negroes and bronze Egyptians from up the valley of the Nile, sturdy Romans with the pride of the all-conquering eagle of the empire in every gesture and in the lines of their arrogant faces. Greek merchants, swift to drive a bargain, yet often outwitted by those slow, silent Arabs whose faces fringed the crowd, sun-scorched and mysterious as the tawny desert from which they came. As he looked over the sea of faces, Saul would see that, with all their differences of colour of skin, of language and country, these people all had a great dumb need, groping after God if haply they might find him. He would feel